Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. In this video, we are going to spend a little bit of time actually buying some comics from eBay. Now, let me restate. So I am actually going to buy some comics a little bit later, but right in this video, what I'm going to do is simulate buying some comics from eBay in an attempt to illustrate for you guys how I go about buying books from eBay, whether they be graded books or raw books. And I'm doing this to some degree or another in service of people asking me questions about how I approach different sellers on eBay, but also as a follow-up to some of the other videos that I've done in the past. In some of those videos, I've spoken about different tips and different techniques and different approaches for handling eBay, but I thought it might be kind of cool to actually simulate making a purchase and kind of talking you guys through how I approach it. What I will tell you, and I tell you this in many of my videos, is that there are probably lots of ways to approach this, right? And there are going to be some folks that are going to watch this and they're going to say, I have a better way, or I have a different way, or here is another idea to consider. I am all for that, right? I am all for the sharing of knowledge, because I am not an expert in all things, right? There are things that I do that I think that work, and sometimes other people have things that are better than mine, or they have things that work for them better than the things that I'm suggesting. And I think it's perfectly fine for us to have a lot of ideas flowing out there, because in the end, it's going to make us all smarter buyers and sellers. And that's what this is all about. So I definitely want to encourage folks that as they're watching this, if you have thoughts, throw them up there, throw them out there for people to consider. If you have questions, make sure that you enter those in the comment section as well. So with that, I am actually, over the course of this video, going to try to simulate buying a couple of Invaders comics. And you guys have heard me talk about Invaders as of late. If you've watched a couple of the recent hunting videos, you know that I was on the hunt for some. I struck out one place. I landed some in another place, but they didn't have all the books. And so I am still on the hunt for other books. And part of me, as you guys know, I love to hunt in the wild. To me, that is part of the fun. And going to eBay is a little easier. It's like, fish in a barrel, right? It's not as much fun, but it is a great resource that I use from time to time. And there are some folks out there that are watching this now that don't really have local comic shops. If they have local comic shops, maybe they don't have the inventory or the book that folks are looking for. And so eBay, again, is a viable option for people depending upon their situation. And so we are going to spend some time, like I said, looking at not just eBay, but a couple of other sites. I'm going to try to weave that stuff in there. I'm going to try to weave a couple of other tips and techniques as I go through this. And ultimately, you guys will tell me whether I am successful in my endeavor or not. So we are going to jump into this thing. And I'm actually going to try to share my screen with you guys. And I'll kind of be toggling back and forth between various screens. So please bear with me as I do that. And the goal is at the end of the day to make this a good video. So that's the goal. All right. So the very first book that I'm actually considering buying is Invaders #1. Yes, I have Invaders #1, a raw copy off to my side. I haven't even put it in my binge yet, but I have debated getting a graded #1. And so part of the research for me has been around, well, what grade do I want to go after, right? So you're thinking 9.8. Let's go 9.8, right? So I pulled up and did a search here for Invaders #1 CGC. And what I found was a really, really nice copy of Invaders #1. And you can see that this thing is nice. This is a nice copy. It is a 9.8. There's definitely something going on in that upper left-hand corner. It's not the best wrap as you look to the right-hand side, but it is a really, really nice copy. When you look at the front and the back, I mean, this is honestly a nice copy of Invaders #1 that I would definitely be proud to have in my collection. But what I can tell you is that I don't want to pay this price right here. I guess I could do 48 bucks for 12 months, but that's not really my thing. But this price right here, that is more than what I actually want to spend on on this particular book, right? So that's not really an option for me. I'm gonna just be completely honest. That is much more than what I want to spend on in Invaders #1. And so here is a 9.4. That's a pretty nice option at 149 bucks. Here is a really nice 9.2 at 139 bucks. But in my mind, I am kind of set on like a 9.6, right? So I'm kind of scrolling through here, looking at some options here. There was 9.6 here, number one. For $210. Not bad, at least in my mind. Here's another even better price at $200 from my comic shop. Invaders number one, 9.6. That's not looking too bad, right? It's free shipping, free returns. It comes from a reputable seller. I've done a lot of business, I'll tell you, with my comic shop. So that's looking pretty good there. And then I'm scrolling up, and here is Invaders number one from 1975. This is another 9.6. This is a private seller of some sort, I'm guessing. They have it for $169. All right. So that's not too bad, right? So let's go ahead and click on that one, and we can see here that that book, to some degree or another, actually looks better. If you look at that upper left-hand corner, actually looks a little bit better than even the 9.8 that we saw from my comic shop a little while ago. Let's look at the back side of this book. And I can tell you, there is a video on my channel where I actually talk about the differences between a 9.6 and 9.8. It's actually a video series that I did with Whitewell Comics. You can see that this is a nice book. This 9.6 is actually pretty darn nice. And again, we just saw a 9.8 for a whole lot more money that had some defects in this upper left-hand corner that were very visible. It also didn't have the best wrap. This is actually a pretty nicely wrapped book. And again, minor differences between the 9.6 and 9.8. But when you look at the dollar amount, it is night and day between the two. But this looks like a pretty good option, right? It is relatively inexpensive versus the other options at 200 bucks and 210, and definitely better than that 9.8 at 500 bucks. But let's do this. Let's bounce out of here real quick, and let's bounce into my preferred grading website, at least for graded books, right? So we're going to look at Invaders number one here on the Go Collect website. You guys have heard me talk a lot about Go Collect, but let's look really quickly here at a 9.8. You can see that the FMV for a 9.8 of Invaders number one is actually $325. My comic shop had it for 500 bucks, and the FMV for this book is actually $325. There is something wrong there, especially when you look at that book and you saw that little bit of defect. So let's click on this thing, and you can see here that there are actually no sales. There are actually no sales even near 500 bucks, not a single sale. And of course, we're not popping on these to go to Comic Link to see what that is, not right now, but you can see 349 bucks, 330 bucks, 305, 314. I mean, we're not looking at anything near 500 bucks. So there's something off there, definitely. So let's look really quickly at this 9.6. You can see the 9.6 has an FMV of 170 bucks. So we saw a couple of books, right? We saw a $500 book that was a 9.8. We're going to take that off the table. We saw three, I believe, 9.6s, one at, or maybe two, I can't remember, one at 210 bucks, one at $200. So there were three, and then one at basically 169. So that one at 169, gorgeous cover, nice wrap, no visible defects that I'm able to see, at least with that quick glance. And it's also under FMV. So that is not a bad deal, right? So let's expand on this, and we can actually see what's happening. There have been some books for 175, 168. Someone had a smoking deal at 99 bucks. There's 137. There's 91, 150, right? So this is not bad. This is not a bad price. So it looks like, by and large, that potentially that one book is the way to go. So let's go back and let's glance at that particular Invaders number one more time to make sure. So this is the one we were just looking at, 169 bucks, 95 cents. It is a little under FMV, which I respect. And let's click on this thing. And you can see here that they are actually charging. It's actually from A1 Comics, which is a comic shop that I'm familiar with. They're up in Sacramento. So scrolling down here, you can see that they're basically charging $8.30 for shipping, which is interesting, right? To ship a slab, if you watch my recent videos on shipping, you can ship a slab in a medium flat rate book or box with United States Postal Service for about 15 bucks. And that's including a couple of bucks for packing supplies and all that kind of stuff. But let's just say 15 bucks, you can ship it. So they're charging $8.30. So they are either, they have a wonderful discount on shipping, they're going to eat some of the cost, or they're going to ship this book a strange way. And so, and let's scroll down. Let's scroll down and let's look at some of the details to see if we can see how they're actually going to ship this book. And I'm scrolling shipping information for this item. We offer combined shipping for multiple items purchased. Items are shipped in the US. US priority mail with tracking. Okay, so they are probably going to eat some of the cost, because I don't think, unless they're able to squeeze it in a legal size envelope with no padding, my guess is that they're going to eat some of the shipping costs. But as I'm looking here, I'm noticing something that I did not think about, right? And that is that the shipping cost is actually potentially not the shipping cost, the sales tax. Sales tax may actually be factored into this one. So initially, that book at $169 that we're looking at right now seemed to be the better book. But what I'm going to have to do is to add in the shipping charges and also the sales tax for California, because that's where I reside and that's where this book is, to determine whether that book is still a smoking deal versus the other book that we saw at $200, or versus me jumping in the car and actually driving up and maybe paying cash for it. So I would have to kind of work my way through that math to make sure that it makes sense for this book. But again, it's a nice book, nice wrap, fair price that is right in line with F&B. So I kind of wanted to show you guys that, because I think that, again, it's all about the thought process and kind of sort of how I approach this thing. And what I'll also point out here very briefly is that if you haven't signed up with the eBay Bucks point program, you definitely want to do that, because by signing up for that program and then buying this book, I would actually get $1.70 in eBay Bucks. And the way that this works, if you guys aren't familiar with it, is that the books that you buy over the course of a quarter, you get a certain percent of that back. And I can't remember exactly what percent it is. It might be just 8% at certain times, as high as 10% in some cases. But it's a rewards program. It's a loyalty program. So when you buy things on eBay, you build bucks and they are held for you. And then at the end of the quarter, you have a period in which you have access to those dollars to basically spend. And it can either take down the price of something that you buy, or if you have enough points, it actually will pay for something that you buy. And so the way that it works, again, is that you're spending over the course of a period of a quarter is captured. A certain percentage of those sales are given back to you at the end of that quarter for you to be able to sell. And I think there's like a window of maybe, 20 days. I can't remember, where you can actually spend those dollars. Fantastic program. If you have not signed up for it, I definitely encourage you to do that. There is a link in the description. When you sign up, you can actually get some savings. If you spend a certain amount of money within a certain period of time, you also get, I think, like $10 or something like that when you spend 25. The other thing, and I've spoken about this in my videos before, is that you can stack your savings program. So there is a program that used to be called Ebates. It has a different name now, but you can basically, if you sign up for that, again, link in the description, you basically go to that website like ebates.com. You click on the eBay link. You then go to eBay. You then buy something in eBay, and you actually get points from both. So the Ebates program will give you like 2% of your purchases, and then the eBay Bucks program will give you a couple of percentage points as well. Depending upon how you do it, when your timing works out, you might actually be able to get 10% of your money back if you time it right, if not more. So two programs that, if you are not familiar with, links in the description, you can read all about it. It is a great way to go. All right, so let's keep this thing moving on. I want to pull out of this one, and I'm actually going to jump into another example for you guys. This time we're actually going to look at Invaders #1 giant size. So this is not a book that I'm going to buy. It is a book that I'm tempted to buy, but a subscriber actually reached out to me recently and offered this book up to me as an AOK. So I'm actually not going to buy this book. I'm waiting for that AOK to come. An awesome AOK from somebody that I haven't received, but I'm looking forward to getting at some point. But I wanted to show this because it's a great example to illustrate something. So here is Giant Size Invaders #1, CGC 9.2, and this book is $175, free shipping, free returns, and it comes from a reputable seller, that being My Comic Shop. And so you could look at this, you could go over to go collect, and you could find out that the price of this book is let's just say 175 bucks. It looks like a smoking deal, right? Because it's right at FNB. You're like, boom, I'm on this book. But what I want to tell you, there is a little secret here, and I do this a lot with my comic shop. A lot of times I do this. When I want to show you this, we're actually going to back out of here, and we are actually going to head over, if I can find the right link, we are actually going to go to mycomicshop's.com's website. And so here is Giant Size Invaders, that #1. And what you'll see here is that exact same 9.2 that we were just looking at on eBay is actually sitting right here. And the price of this book, I think I skipped. Oh no, it's right here, is 155 bucks, right? 155 bucks for that book. They were selling the same book on eBay for 175 with free shipping. Right here, it is 155, right? So a pretty decent savings. Now, of course, what you have to do is as you go through this transaction, you'll have to see whether there's shipping charges. Sometimes, depending upon how much stuff you buy or how you choose to ship your things or receive them from mycomicshop.com, your shipping could be a couple of bucks. So you definitely want to look into that. But this is a scenario where you could find it on eBay, but if you actually go to that vendor's website, you may actually be able to find it cheaper and save yourself a little money. Now, however, the problem with this is that if you buy it from mycomicshop.com website directly, then you won't be able to have the Ebates and eBay Bucks program. So you would have to think about that. You might have to do the math to figure out which is more important, right? And how much money are you spending, how much money you're saving, so you'll have to figure that out. But this is a really good way to potentially save yourself a couple of bucks versus just buying straight through the eBay website. So I wanted to demonstrate that for you guys. And again, these are just things that I'm throwing out there that you have to dig a little bit deeper into to really make sure that the math actually works for you. So we're going to do one more example here. And again, part of the reason why I'm not actually showing you guys me buying these books is partly because it will reveal all kinds of personal information as I went through the transaction. So we don't necessarily want to do that. But here is Invaders #3. This is another book that I actually do need. This is Invaders #3. With this one, this is actually a raw book. And so I actually did a search earlier, and I can show you those maybe, but this is a search and I pulled this book up and I've already kind of looked at this book, and it's not a bad looking book as you look at it, right? There are a couple of little color breaking spine ticks. You can see right there, kind of sort of across from the eye, between the B and the eye, right over on that left spine. There's one near the fist. I mean, there's a couple of little spine ticks up here near the heads and things like that. One up there in the upper left-hand corner. But generally speaking, this is not a bad book, right? I think they kind of graded this book at a 4.5, which isn't bad, right? Because I'm not always looking for a super high grade. It just depends upon the book. So this is actually not a bad book. But what you'll discover here is that there's only one photo. It's only one photo, right? So would you buy a book where you only see one photo, right? And the question is this a stock photo or is this the real photo, right? So there's a couple of questions here, right? So I actually want to scroll down here and kind of look at some of the details. But what you'll see here, of course, is that this is also my comic shop. My comic shop, I'm telling you, I dig these guys. I like whoever they are down in Texas, I dig them. But there are some details here around what a 4.5 actually looks like. Talking about some of the defects and things like that. And then it says the item image for this listing is not a stock image. It shows the exact item ordered, which is super helpful. But let's say that this were a private seller. If this were truly a private seller that posted up an image of a single image, I personally would immediately contact the seller. I would immediately contact the seller and I would send the seller a message about it, right? I would click on details about items, and then I would try to ask them some kind of question around this. So the simulation that we just fell apart right there, but I would basically send them a message and basically ask them, hey, can you post up some additional photos of this particular book so that I can actually see, the front and the back and maybe the inside stables, the inside cover, right? Because there are people that actually sell comics online that don't necessarily know a whole lot about comics. They're not quite part of the comic book community. They're quite there. They have books, but they're trying to sell them, but they may not be fully in the know. And so I would send that kind of message to say, hey, can you give me some details about this book? Can I see some additional photos? And then as part of that, I would also ask some questions. Hey, when you send the photos or post the photos up, can you just tell me whether there's, anything that is cut out from the book? Are all the staples firm? Is there any writing in the book? Are there any missing pages? Are there any tears? So you can send a super polite message to kind of ask some of those questions because, even if they post up the photo, right? Ideally, they post a photo up, but sometimes when they post a photo, if they do, then they're not really nice photos, right? And I think people can also send you photos via the direct message here on eBay. But let's say that they send it over, the photos may not be good photos. And so by asking a couple of clarifying questions, it also makes you a more informed buyer, right? So there's a couple of things that you can kind of do to better understand, the setup and what's actually happening, right? So I think I have one more example, kind of sort of. So we're going to go back to looking at this one particular book, that being Invaders #3. But we're actually going to go to the My Comic Shop website itself. Think I can pull that up. So we're actually going to look here. And what you'll see is that there are lots of different Invaders #3 that are actually available for My Comic Shop. They showed one, but they actually have a ton from a 3.5. They have a 9.6 graded. I mean, it goes all the way up to like a 6.0. So they have a ton of Invaders books that you can actually pick from. So I want to see if I can actually look at one. So what we're going to do is to try to glance at this first one that is for 18 bucks, and they're calling it Fine. So we're going to click on that, and you can see here, if I can blow this up, I don't know if I'll be able to blow it up. See if we can click something else. Hopefully you guys will be able to actually see this. So let me see. Toggle back and see if you guys can actually see that. Yeah, you can. Okay. So here you can actually see a blown up photo of this particular book. I don't know if I can. Yeah. So here you can actually zoom in quite closely and be able to see very, very close up how this book looks. You can see that there's a slight overwrap here where the back cover is right here, but then the front cover is here. So there's a slight overwrap. There's a little bit of a scratch here, definitely some dirt and stuff like that on the A and the V. Generally a nice book. I don't think that that's color touch. Hopefully you guys can actually see that. I don't think that that's color touch, but that's one of the things that you definitely want to kind of look for. But generally speaking, this is actually not a bad book, but you can see with, bounced out of it too quickly, hit the wrong button. Sorry about that. So you can actually see, because you're able to actually see all of this white over here from the back cover, that kind of explains why the back cover is shifted left and the front cover is shifted right. It's a little bit because of all this extra white that is being shown on this left side over here. So, there may be a little bit of correction that can actually do with a press, where you can actually rotate that staple back to the left a little bit more and off to the side of the book, that it may actually improve it. But it's actually not a bad looking book, not at all. So definitely something that I would be interested in. So let me see if I can bounce out of this really quickly. But what you'll be able to notice here is that there are actually lots of books. And let me see if we can click on this one. Will it allow me? So this is one of the books that is actually 18 bucks, as you see it here, is the one that has the slight overwrap where you can actually see a little bit of the white on the spine. But if you tab over here, you can actually see another version of the book that's basically the exact same price at 18 bucks, but it's actually a different copy of the same book. And that, again, it's one of the great things about My Comic Shop, is that they have ample inventory. So you're able to actually flip through. This is actually, what is this? 5.5. It's actually a 5.5. You can see the difference in a 5.5 versus this 5.5. Exact same grade book, but very, very different. And I think that's one of the great things, again, about being able to kind of shop online, is that you can actually look at some of these different elements. This is a 6.0, and as you go from the 6.0 to the 5.5, you can actually see some minor differences there as well. So again, a really great way to kind of do some comparison shopping here between the various books. So let me think if there's one other thing that I want to show you guys. Yeah, and I think there is. I think there's one other thing that I would want to show you before I kind of wrap this video up. And I want to go back to one of our first examples here, that being the Invaders #1. I want to bounce back here, and I actually want to head over here to, let's say, this book right here. This is the book that we saw that is basically $200, and I believe that we saw the FMV is actually at 160, right? And so what I would potentially do for this particular book, let's just say that this is my preferred book and that it's not my comic shop. So we're going to kind of just mock this scenario up using what we have in front of us. But this is a $200 book. At least it's being offered at $200. What I would theoretically do if I were presented with this particular book, I would, and that the book was actually overpriced based upon Go Collects FMV, what I would do is I would actually send the seller an offer. And in this offer, basically what I would say to them would be, hey, I'm very interested in adding your book to my collection. I think it's a really nice copy. What I want to do is I want to offer you, let's say, $170 for this book. I'll offer you $170 for this book because that is based upon the current fair market value for this book from Go Collect. I hope you will accept my offer, and then I would sign my name. That is basically how I would make an offer to someone, because what I'm basically saying is, hey, I like your book. I want to keep this book in my collection. I'm not buying it to resell it. I'm buying it because I want it to be in my collection. But at your current price, your book is overpriced based upon the data that I have at my disposal. And based upon the data that I have at my disposal, a fair price for your book is $170. And I throw out the, the reference of Go Collect. And sometimes I'll even say Go Collect a pricing service. And I'll do this depending upon, how many sales someone has and how savvy I think that person might be. Because you can say Go Collect and they have no clue, or you can say Go Collect a pricing guide and they that way they kind of have some idea of what you're talking about. But I basically am giving them context for why I'm making this offer versus just saying, hey, here's a low ball offer. Here's an offer that is below what your asking price is, and just leaving it at that. I try to provide a little bit of context. And more often than not, to be honest with you, it actually works. More often than not, it actually works. And in some cases, I've had one guy specifically write back and say, bro, I wish I could, but I actually paid a lot more money for this book and I can't. And my response was, cool, no problem. I respect that. I'll just buy these other books from you, And then the guy ends up coming back to me and basically selling the book to me for the price that I basically offered. Because it's this thing of, just because someone catches a brick and pays too much for a book and are underwater, that does not mean that you have to catch the brick. And kind of as we illustrated in this video, there are in many cases, a ton of books out there. You don't have to catch a brick. But the thing is, you want to make an offer to someone that is based upon something versus I want it for cheap, right? You are making an offer based upon data that says what the actual price of that book is. And yes, we've spoken a lot about the graded comics in this video, but you can do the same thing for a raw book, right? So you can evaluate the grade of the book. You can use, sometimes they will even post up what they think the grade is, and you can go to comicspriceguide.com. That is actually my preferred resource for raw books. You go right to comicspriceguide.com. You can actually see what the prices are for raw books. That puts you in the exact same position, right? Of being able to say, hey, I want this book for my collection. I'm a fan of Spider-Man, for example, or Namor or the Human Torch. I'm making this offer because the current FMV for this particular book, according to comicspriceguide.com, is whatever that price is. And if they say no, they say no. But again, these are techniques that have actually worked for me consistently over time. So I have faith in them. Sometimes people will reject the offer. Sometimes they'll take the offer. Sometimes there's a little bit of back and forth and negotiation. But what you should do is never be afraid to walk away. Never be afraid to actually walk away from a deal, because there are plenty of other deals out there. Don't catch a break, right? So we went through a couple of examples here. I hope this video was informative. I hope that it was helpful. Again, at the end of the day, you guys are going to let me know. If you have questions, comments, thoughts about this video, please let me know, because I am happy to do a follow-up video or happy to answer any questions that you guys may have in the comment section, certainly. But you can also reach out to me on Instagram at RegieCollects. I am always happy to help you guys, and I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that you enjoyed it. And if you did, give the video a thumbs up, share it with your friends, leave a comment behind. Thank you very much.